Okay, we might get started. So hi everyone, my name's Zoe. I work for the Better Health Generation and I'm pleased to be here today just to present the final webinar as part of our Lunch and Learn series. I'll have the chat box open and we'll look at that at the end of the series today. So if you've got any questions, feel free to write this in there or the Q&A box, and then I'll have a look at the end of the webinar. Okay. So firstly, we'll look at what was covered in the webinar last week. We had a look at wellbeing and the impacts of this in relation to health. So as part of wellbeing and promoting this for our job seekers, this involved looking at building that support network and working out ways to develop physical health. If anyone wasn't able to attend this webinar, it has been recorded, so let me know, or there's some further information on our flyers where you can access this. Today, however, will be on the importance of work right now for your clients. So with work, this will involve looking at why work is important for individuals, having a look at the job fit considerations. So a large part of maintaining a placement is looking at, does that placement actually meet the job fit considerations of that individual? We'll look at post-placement support. We will review 3 core phases of PPS, which involves looking at an assessment phase. So how secure is the employment? It includes an action phase, which is what we can do to support the individual in that job. And the 3rd phase is independence. So getting to a point where the person no longer requires any PPS support as they're an independent worker. And then we'll go through a little bit of a summary of the series so far. And then, like I said before, we can have some question time at the end. So why is work important, especially for our health and wellbeing? So a large portion of many of our roles is to support a person to find work and suitable employment. So by us really understanding the importance of this is what can help us to really sort of promote work to individuals, maintain motivation, and also build confidence within what work actually means to the person. So work is important because it's obviously beneficial to our health and wellbeing in different ways. It can help us build confidence and self-esteem. So this could be whether we learn a new skill, which leads to a sense of achievement. It could be some sort of personal growth as well that we're wanting to achieve through work. For many of us, can be that financial reward, which is why it is important. So that financial reward could mean that a person can engage in some sort of leisure activity, or it could be for a person that might be having some financial hardship that they can go and purchase food or access health supports as well. Work is important as it does provide us with routine and structure. So you may have heard over the last couple of months with the situation with COVID-19 that a lot of your job seekers might be saying, I'm a little bit bored at the moment, I'm not really sure what to do, my routine has been disrupted. So with a lot of this feedback, we can really see that routine is that sort of key aspect of what work really enables. And by increasing our productivity and sort of daily things that we do, it can stimulate us to do more activities. So this is where work can be that really great tool to be used for that. Secondly, it does keep us busy, it challenges us, it gives us that means to develop ourselves. So similar to what I said before, work can either be for that personal area of growth, so whether that be for an individual to build socialisation or increase their networks for that more personal growth, or it could be professionally that that person may want to learn a new computer program or develop some sort of new skill. It gives us a sense of pride and identity, purpose and personal achievement. So for many of us, we do spend a lot of the time during our weeks at work, so it can become that large role of our identity. And finally, it enables us to socialise, build contacts and find support. So many friendships are made at work. For people who may be feeling isolated or lonely, work may increase in community engagement and that social relationships as well. So there's a lot of different importance factors there. And I think as part of our roles, it's really looking at for our job seekers, which one of these important factors may drive them. And this might be used as that motivational tool to support them in work as well. Okay, so we've gone through some of the important factors of work. And like I said before, we need to ensure that we're considering the most appropriate job fit to be able to meet those sort of importance aspects of why a person might maintain their role. So there's sort of two main components here in terms of looking at that correct job person fit. Firstly, it's looking at what does the role actually require and what is that job seeker or worker's commitment to the role. So if we look at the role requirements first, this might include when we're looking at that correct job person fit, it could mean looking at does the person meet criteria? So do they have the licenses that are required for that job and that application? It could mean looking at task demands. So this could be by breaking down specific duties into weeks or months or specific days. And by doing that analysis, we can look at does the person actually have all sort of the requirements to meet those task demands? And if they don't, what can we do to support them with that? It could be looking at resources. So does the person have a car to attend work? Do they have a phone if this is a requirement of the job? It's also looking at skills and work history. So if the person has been unemployed for a significant amount of time, this might impact their job readiness. So it's where we look at potentially those transferable skills that they can bring to the role. Next would be the drug and alcohol screen. So for many of our mining jobs in particular, or other sort of industries as well, they do ask for a drug and alcohol screen. So can the person actually pass this if it's a requirement for the role? If not, what can we do to support them with that? Is it by increasing site days and appointments with yourself to increase that motivation and support network that's there? It could be looking at, does the person have all the licenses and checks required for that role? So do they have an up-to-date police clearance and any criminal record that might impact the role? And finally, age may also be a factor. So depending on what the employer is looking for, if it's a position where the employer wants somebody potentially more physically fit, they may preference a younger worker, or if they're looking for someone with a strong sort of life experiences, they may preference the mature worker. So sometimes it can be a factor depending on what the employer is looking for. So secondly, in terms of this job person fit considerations, we are looking at the commitment. So it can influence someone's ability to maintain a job. And when we're looking at this appropriate fit, we may review the health and functional capacity. So does the person have any health barriers that might impact their ability to complete the role? So whether this be, do they have any lifting restrictions? Do they have any side effects from particular medications that might impact their capacity? And then looking at how we can actually build this. So we'll review that within the action phase of the webinar as we go through today. Secondly, we're looking at satisfaction levels. So if you're putting someone forward for a job, but is it actually something they want to do? Because this might then impact their commitment to sustain the role. Next is, does the job meet the person's goals? So if the person has a personal goal of increasing socialization and working with other people to build that social network, but the job that they're actually working in is one where they're primarily working on their own, does the placement actually meet the goals of that individual? And hence this might impact their commitment to sustain the role. And then finally, motivation. So what is the person's level of motivation to work? We did look at motivational interviewing in a webinar 2 weeks ago that was presented by Sakina. So if you'd like any further information on building motivation, please have a look at that webinar. Okay. So next we're looking at post-placement support. So a job seeker you've been working quite closely with has obtained work. Post-placement support should then be part of that next sort of assessment support phase to assist the worker at that time. What post-placement support does, it does provide that service and support for the individual, and it helps really maintaining their employment and identifying any particular obstacles or considerations that they might need additional support with. So as part of that, we're looking at those 3 core phases that we discussed earlier. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to break them down into each phase, and hopefully through that support you all with further understanding on, in each phase, what can we do to assist the job seeker, or now the worker, in maintaining their role. So before doing that, we'll look at who actually might benefit from PPS. So really anyone can be considered for PPS. In particular, it may benefit those who experience difficulties with motivation, those who actually ask for the additional support while they have obtained employment. So with those people that actually go and seek that support from yourself or a PPS support on site, their likelihood of actually engaging is higher because they've actually driven that themselves. In terms of those who may have poor attendance on site, that could also be someone that you might want to offer PPS to. It could be someone that has multiple health barriers and as a result might need some support with particular modifications or adaptations at the workplace, or how they can sort of disclose their health condition as well. Okay. So the first phase that I'd like to discuss first as part of that support within PPS is the assessment phase. So in this phase, we're wanting to consider what sort of things need to be reviewed in this first phase. So it should be used as a collaborative approach between yourself and the worker. As previous to what I said before, it increases the level of engagement from that individual. So a consideration in the assessment phase could be looking at, does the person have any caring or parental responsibilities? And if so, how are these managed? Looking at previous work history and placements. So if the person has a work pattern of sustaining employment for, say, only 2 weeks for the last 2 jobs, what sort of happened here? Is it due to issues with additional pressure? Is it difficulties that they found in previous jobs with managing conflict? Because sometimes past behaviour can be that strong indicator of future behaviour. So we really want to look at, in the assessment phase, what we can do to sort of reduce that pattern and sustain the employment. It's also looking at attendance. So does the person regularly attend the site? Because if their attendance is poor, this may mean in a work context, it could be transferable into that setting. Transportation, how will they be getting to work? Do they have a car? Do they have access to public transport? And those sort of factors. It could be confidence levels as well. So how confident is the worker in maintaining their new employment or completing the duties that are required for that role? And health conditions. So does the person have any health conditions which might impact their ability to sustain the role? So this is something that can be further explored within the assessment phase and really going down into the specifics of what these might be. So I mentioned a few of those before, meaning lifting restrictions. It could be side effects to medications. It could be they might have difficulties following more than one instructions, and then really working out, once we know exactly what it could be, what adaptations need to be made in the workplace. Main duties and responsibilities. So this is another consideration where we can think about what specific duties are required in the role. If the person in the assessment phase says to you that they are concerned about their ability to manage conflict, and this may be a part of a customer service role that they've recently been employed in, this is something where we can explore in that assessment phase to try and support them with a plan to navigate this. It's also important within those main duties and responsibilities to look at what actual strengths do they bring to the role, because this can be a really good indicator for confidence building and showing that, you know, you do have the skills to maintain the role that you have recently been employed in. Hours of work is another consideration in this phase. So we're looking at, does the work fit within the person's lifestyle preferences or their health needs as well, if relevant. So if a person, the doctor said they can only work a certain amount of time or do certain things, how will the hours of work then impact their ability to do the role? And then finally, the employment conditions and work environment. So does the workplace supply relevant PPE if relevant for that job? So you may recognise this from previous webinar that was completed 2 weeks ago relating to motivational interviewing. It can also be used as an assessment tool as part of the assessment phase of PPS. So the change ruler is used to sort of track the progression and assess how important work may be for that individual and how confident they are in that work or their duties. So what you can do during the assessment phase is look at rating that from 0 to 10 on the importance of work for that person, and then 0 to 10 in terms of how confident they are in meeting the requirements for the role. This can then be used during the next action phase, which is when they are working in that role. And you can sort of track the progress of it using this ruler. So if you're finding that 2 weeks into the role, that their importance level is much higher than their confidence level, looking at how we can actually build then the confidence levels for that person. If you do want any further information regarding the change ruler, you can have a look at the webinar from 2 weeks ago regarding motivational interviewing. So we're going to move on now to the action phase. So this is how we can support our workers in PPS. And a lot of this is about maintaining and building capacity. So some aspects there relating to functional changes, personal factors, and the work environment can all be reviewed in terms of building that capacity. So we're just going to explore these in a little bit more detail. And you may come across a few strategies that might help during your PPS support with any workers that you are working with at the moment. So one of the strategies to maintain and build capacity for work is really building resilience. So resilience is our ability to bounce back in certain situations, and it can be a combination of thoughts, actions, and words. And an increase in resilience can mean an increase in capacity. So ways that we can build resilience could be by developing effective time management, could be by adopting healthier coping strategies and a balanced lifestyle. So it could mean the person participates in enjoyable activities, they're using good sleep hygiene, they are doing relaxation strategies, healthy eating and helpful thinking as well. Secondly, looking at worker satisfaction and motivation as a means to build capacity. So understanding what's going to support that person to be satisfied in their work. So this is where we can review the previous slides regarding the importance of work for individuals and thinking about how can we support that satisfaction level. Is it through a sense of achievement for that individual? Is it through recognition? Is it the work itself? Is it promotional opportunities or growth? So looking at how we can improve that satisfaction by reviewing some of these factors as well. In terms of increasing motivation, this can be another thing to build capacity as well. So some ways that we can do that is being goal orientated. So with that, we think about why the person actually came to work in the first place. Was it for those financial rewards? Was it for specific goals that they might have? And then using that as a means to build that motivation. It can also be for yourself by providing positive feedback, because feedback can be that prime source of learning and growth and opportunity for an individual. It could be by looking at what have you actually achieved so far in the role. Even those small wins can be those things that make those big differences. So really celebrating those as well. It could be by encouraging them to take action. So trying new things and overcoming obstacles as well. So encouraging that, yes, challenges may arise. Once you overcome them, look at it from a perspective of an opportunity for growth, as an example, to try and build that motivation. Another way to build that capacity is looking at the health support services and that support network for the individual. So if a flare-up of their condition arises or something happens in respect to their health that impacts their ability within the role, who can we link them in and what sort of supports are already available? So this may be a counsellor, it could be a GP. If you have a back to work consultant on site, you could use them as a resource for any support or queries. It could be job access support. So with job access, if you are applying for that PPS support through them, they might be able to support with individual support or workplace modifications for general training and awareness at the employment. It could also be yourself. So making sure that the person is aware that you are that support person for them during their employment. Another part of building capacity as well could be if a person is concerned about a health condition that might impact their role. So say a person may become very overwhelmed due to anxiousness and they're worried about how this might impact their ability to sustain the role. Thinking about how they can actually disclose this to their employer in a way that's not putting them in a disadvantage for the role, and really showing that it actually can be a strength in the position. So for example, if a person is saying to you that they are feeling overwhelmed, if they've given too many instructions, they don't know sort of how to sort of navigate that, a way that they could possibly present that to an employer could be that when multiple instructions are provided to me, I can sometimes find it difficult to focus. However, I've learned that writing things down on a list and prioritising these tasks really helps me stay on top of what I need to complete. And as a result, I feel like I've really developed good skills in working under pressure. So you can sort of see how you are still explaining what may be causing that sort of stress or concern, but presenting it to the employer in a way where it's actually become a strength because that person's now better able to work under pressure. Further within the action phase, so other strategies that might be used to support workers in PPS could be looking at that confidence building and developing self-esteem. So as I've mentioned in the previous slides regarding the change ruler, that can be a really good indicator for measuring confidence and whether it is changing throughout the employment. And this can be then something that you can use to really identify what can we do to support you if it does change. Otherwise, some of the example questions on the screens may be useful. So we can look at, as a way to build confidence, looking at what the person has achieved in the past. So if you're finding that during your PPS calls or contacts with the person that they're using a lot of negative self-talk or doubting themselves quite a lot, saying to them, what have you done in the past that's helped? If someone else came to you with a similar concern, what would you say to them? Or by you thinking in this way, is this actually helping you to achieve the goals that you set out in terms of why you wanted to work to begin with? So also linking it back to that goals that was set initially. Another way to support people in work is by developing that good sense of routine and structure, which we did touch on briefly before. So as part of that, you might look at the person developing a diary or a planner to make sure that they're tracking what needs to be done. It could be setting alerts in their phone. So alerts for example, it could be for sleep. If they're finding that sleep can be something that is frequently disrupted or that sleep routine isn't established yet, it could be those sleep alerts that are set up on their phone. So really that routine is going to support those strong work habits and then be transferable in that work setting as well. So once we've gone through the assessment and action phase, we'd hope that with the strategies and support that were provided, that there's a point where now the worker is independent. So as part of this independence, it's where the worker may, for example, have all the strategies and everything in place to be able to complete the job and the duties independently. So what we can see in this one and the ways that we can support that is to make sure that the person has all the resources that are accessible for that job. So if you as the employment provider were supporting that person, for example, with bus passes throughout the whole PPS, and then becoming an independent worker, you want to see that that person can still go to work without those bus passes to then be independent. So ensuring that the equipment and PPE is available and training opportunities are there. Ways to support job independence could also be by creating an understanding of the workplace. So we discussed the disclosure plan as a way to do that, and also having that disability awareness training if relevant. And also ensuring the environment does craft in a way to enable task completion. So the work environment, making sure that the person's got the appropriate setup for the position. So as a bit of a summary from today, being in work keeps us busy, challenges us and gives us the means to develop ourselves. It can give us that sense of pride, identity and personal achievement. It enables us to socialise, build contacts and find support. It provides us with financial benefits to support ourselves and further our interests. And it can support us in terms of our physical and mental health, because we are better when we do work. I mean, I know from a lot of the feedback that has been provided by some job seekers at the moment with that disruption in routine, a lot of people are really trying to work and build that motivation again to get back into the workforce for many of those reasons that are there. And furthermore, for us, we can support our job seekers or those who have obtained employment by really understanding that capacity and job demands. We'll try and build that self-esteem and confidence, and also encouraging those work-like habits and behaviours in everyday life, whether that be looking at some of those ways to negate negative self-talk that we went through, or building those good balanced lifestyle tips and coping strategies as well. So this was the final webinar of our Lunch and Learn series. I do have a summary of the other webinars that were provided in the previous weeks. So over the series, we have looked at building rapport and goal setting over video and telephone calls, job seeker assessments, self-care and resilience for the advisor, motivational interviewing, wellbeing considerations for your clients, and also from today, the importance of work right now for your clients in relation to PPS. So I hope that over the webinar series, they've been informative for you all. And if you weren't able to attend any of the webinars, they have been recorded. So please either let myself know, or there's contact information on the flyer details that were sent out. We will look to run these again in the future, and we'll let you know if we've got some further dates about new training that might be provided as well. So thank you all for today, and thanks again for joining our webinar series over the Lunch and Learn. I will have a look at the chat box now if there's any questions, and I'll leave this open for a few minutes. So please feel free to write me any questions that you might have. Otherwise, thank you again for joining me today. And I look forward to seeing you all in our future webinars in the future.